Well, it seems as though many seem to think, or at least some seem to think, that the ACC may lose teams before 2030 and that maybe the conference is not solidified until 2030. We're going to talk about that in this episode, this live episode of Couz's Corner, and we're also going to talk about how that can impact the Big 12 conference if it happens. And even though most of us Big 12 fans have thought that it would be a positive, I'm going to tell you why it actually may be a negative if this happens, and I'll explain in this episode. But before we do, though, I want to give a quick shout out to my channel sponsor. I'll be back in about 40 seconds. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident, are fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. Thank you for letting me get through the housekeeping, and thanks to Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner for supporting the show. Also, thanks to my new sponsor, Appalachia Digital, the designers of my brand new website, wvsportschat.com. Please go check it out. We're still making some tweaks, still fixing some bugs over there, but it is up and going, and you can go check it out, find articles, and get access to all my shows here and on Hoops from the Hills. Now, last week there was a show, I think it was last week, guys over at Warchant who cover Florida State did a show, and they said on their show that they had heard that the Big Ten was talking to Florida State, okay? And that they actually used the word, near the end of that show, they actually used the word that the Big Ten was instigating it, which tells me that the Big Ten are the ones that really want Florida State. Now, that kind of flies in the face of what was reported last summer by Brett McMurphy and others, that the SEC and Big Ten did not really want Florida State. So I don't know who to believe in this situation, right? We'll find out in due time. But then Greg Flugar on his show, College Football Speaker Around the Corner, who has been right on most of these topics. He was right about Colorado going to the Big 12. He was right about USC and UCLA going to the Big 10. He was right about Oregon and Washington going to the Big 10. He is hearing from his side of things, from his sources, that that North Carolina would actually be the first one to leave the ACC and go to the Big 10 or the SEC, that both of those conferences would want North Carolina. He's been talking about that for months. Other people have said the same thing. That's not new news to any of us that follow realignment. Well, not only has Greg talked about UNC being target number one, in a recent show a few days ago, he talked about how North Carolina and Virginia are tied at the hip, that anything North Carolina does, Virginia is likely going to do it with them. So if UNC goes to the Big 10, Virginia is likely going to the Big 10. If UNC goes to the SEC, Virginia is likely going to the SEC. Now, that seems unbelievable to some of us. Why in the world? You got a school like Virginia who does not have a valuable football brand, in my opinion. They have not been good at football for decades. UNC's not really been all that great at football. They're trying, and they're not terrible. They're not a bad program by any stretch of the imagination, but they're nowhere near the Florida States and the Clemsons. They've not even been as good as Louisville probably in the last decade, or some other teams in the ACC that you want to mention. You could even argue Duke's been a better program the last 5 years or so. But that being said, UNC is a valuable brand, and I think we all know that. We've all heard about them being sought after because of the location, the state they're in, the fact they're a flagship school, and whether we like to admit it or not, probably even has something to do with their academics, right? And we all know about UVA's academics. They're one of the top academic institutions in the country. So all this got me thinking. As a Big 12 guy, most of us have envisioned this happening. If the ACC falls apart, we've envisioning it happening this way. Okay, you're going to have about 4 teams probably leave the ACC to go either the SEC, the Big 10, whatever. Might be 2 each. Don't know. Whatever the case may be. Maybe even 6 teams. Whatever the case may be. And then the Big 12 would take some of the schools that were left over. Maybe it was Louisville, maybe it was Pitt, maybe it was Virginia Tech, maybe NC State, whoever, right? Georgia Tech, whatever. Big 12 would get some of those other teams. But I got to thinking, when you look at heck, Greg's even mentioned in a show yesterday, Greg mentioned Miami now potentially talking to the Big 10. Potentially being, I don't want to say a target, but the Big 10 sees them as valuable because of their AAU, because they're a private school. It would get them into South Florida, yada, yada. And even Duke's big money people are doing everything they can to try to get Duke into the P2, right? So everybody's making the push to get into P2. And I'm assuming schools like West Virginia are probably trying to do that. But when you look at these schools, okay, let's just use West Virginia. And look, this goes to all West Virginia's Big 12 peers too. This could apply to Iowa State. It could apply to Kansas State. It could apply to Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, maybe even the Four Corner schools, right? You name it. But if you match West Virginia up against UVA in football, who's historically been the best brand? I don't think there's a question it's West Virginia, right? Who probably has the most passionate fan base? I don't think there's an argument. It's probably West Virginia. You could argue Virginia has a better basketball brand. At least the last decade, they have won a national title. But historically, I don't know that they've been a better basketball brand than West Virginia. West Virginia's top 25 all-time in wins in basketball, too. They're top 15 in football. They're top 25 in basketball. So is Virginia really a more valuable brand than West Virginia? I don't know. Again, I'm asking this question without knowing the answer. To me, I think West Virginia is more valuable, but I'm biased. So maybe it's not fair for me to ask it. So when you look at the targets here, when you look at the fact it's North Carolina, it's Virginia, Florida State and Clemson are obvious. They're the two largest brands, most valuable brands, bring the most TV eyeballs in the ACC. I think those two are kind of obvious. But when you look at the fact that UNC and UVA may be more sought after, more valuable in the eyes of the Big 10 and or SEC than Florida State and Clemson, what's that tell you? It tells you that it's not about football anymore, at least not this go-around. It's about getting into new markets. This will be North Carolina and Virginia for both of these conferences. It's about student enrollment. You've got two states, or at least in the case of North Carolina, you've got a state who's growing in population, which means student enrollment's growing. And that's not the case in most schools around the country. These schools are facing a enrollment cliff, as some will call it, an enrollment decline. Nationwide, there's a decline in college-age students. It just is what it is. That's a fact. I've been to business seminars that have talked about it. We've heard Greg talk about it on his show. We've seen articles written about it. There's an enrollment decline across the country in college students, in large part because there are not as many college students, college-age people out there. That's a big part of it. So North Carolina is one of the few states that is apparently seeing an uptick in student population. So that's an attractive market to be in. It gets your advertisers into new markets. It gets your advertisers in the growing state of North Carolina. Gets them into a neighboring state of Virginia, which has a pretty solid population. Right? It's not about football, apparently, because North Carolina and Virginia, there are more valuable brands out there in football. I would even argue there are multiple brands in the Big 12 that are more valuable if you're just looking at football. Heck, I would argue that Kansas is as valuable as Virginia. Not just football, but basketball. Why would you not take Kansas over Virginia? Why would you not take TCU over Virginia, who gives you the Dallas market, get you in the state of Texas if you're the Big 10? Now, I know they have SMU, so maybe that doesn't matter, but I'm just using that as an example. I think there are multiple brands. Heck, you might argue that Arizona State or Utah or Arizona may be more valuable brand than Virginia. So if UNC and Virginia are considered more valuable because of market, because of basketball, and because of academics, what's that mean for the West Virginia Mountaineers? It means that at the end of the day, when all of this happens, when this ACC loses these teams, if they lose these teams, it means that I'm not sure West Virginia will ever get a P2 invite, ever. If the SEC and the Big Ten are going to just gobble up the top brands in the ACC, I think the Big 12 could potentially be left out to dry here. Now, maybe I'm panicking. Maybe I'm hitting the panic button too soon. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic. But I'm really worried that the Big 12 and in conjunction to that, in connection to that, West Virginia will get left behind and left out. If the Big Ten and SEC decide that they're going to do their own thing, what if they do get, let's say, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, all go to the Big Ten and SEC? What's that mean for Notre Dame? Does that mean Notre Dame all of a sudden they're going to have to find a home? So maybe they go to the Big Ten. Then you see Stanford leave and go to the Big Ten with them. Maybe Miami follows and goes to the Big Ten. Then you see maybe Duke goes to the Big Ten. And then all of a sudden, you have all these top ACC brands in the Big Ten and SEC. Yes, the Big 12 could go get Louisville, and they could go get Pitt, and they could go get the other schools. But at that point, if the SEC and Big Ten have all the top brands already in their eyes, why would they even need to associate themselves at that point in time? Why would they even want to associate themselves with the Big 12? That is my fear. My fear is that the Big 12 will get left completely out, or that these conferences are putting so much emphasis on academics and and market size. West Virginia's in a state that's losing population. It's one of the poorest states in the country. You're not getting a ton of TV op. Yes, West Virginia has a passionate fan base. They draw pretty good TV ratings. But they don't add up to the TV ratings of a Florida State or a Clemson. They don't add up to the TV ratings of a Miami. So how is West Virginia going to get them? How's West Virginia going to survive if the P2 decides that they're going to do their own thing and gobble up the top brands? I really, really don't think West Virginia is going to get included in that. I really don't, because I think the things they're putting an emphasis on are things that West Virginia has no control over, in my opinion. That's the size of their state, the economics of their state, the demographics of their state. The only thing that might save West Virginia's bacon is if they go out and they start winning at a high level. They become a very, very attractive, like I talked about in my previous episode. I predicted that West Virginia will be a very exciting team to watch again, and I do think that's the case. I think that, alongside the influence of Pat McAfee, are the only two things that might save West Virginia from getting left behind if the P2 decides to do their own thing, take the top brands with them, and just go do their own thing. I think West Virginia, outside of winning at a very high level, somehow seeing some miraculous student enrollment increase, I just don't know that they make it. Now, West Virginia is doing things, I think, to try to improve their status among other peer institutions. I mean, they're already a Carnegie R1 research school, so they are, outside of AAU, they're the next level up, next highest level up. They do a lot of research. As a matter of fact, I just read an article, I think it was yesterday, that I found online when I was researching for the show. West Virginia has increased their research funding over the last 5 years. They've seen an 85% uptick in research funding and spending. They spent over $250 million on research in the fiscal year 2024. That's a lot. Now, it may not be as much as other schools out there, but it's a lot. They have a state-of-the-art medical school, really good medical school, and it's right on campus. The West Virginia WVU medicine is growing. They are buying hospitals up throughout the entire state. As a matter of fact, I live 3.5 hours south of Morgantown. I can almost throw a rock and hit our local hospital, Princeton Community Hospital. West Virginia bought that hospital last year. My wife was an employee at that hospital. WVU Medicine owns that hospital. They have big plans for this hospital. They plan to make it a large hospital, similar, if not equal to the one in Morgantown. They want it to be their southern West Virginia hub. At least that's the rumor. So they're doing a lot of big things to try to be more attractive from an academic standpoint, from a research standpoint. They have a great law school. They have a lot of good things going for them. But what I fear is the things that these conferences are looking at are things that West Virginia don't necessarily excel in. They're looking at market size. They're looking at demographics. They're looking at graduation rates. And, because West Virginia is a school who they purposely try to keep tuition low to allow students in that normally can't afford to go to college. That means some of those students don't make it. They have lower admission standards because they're trying to educate as many students from the Appalachians as possible. So they have pretty low admission standards, which means a lot of those kids don't make it. So they have lower graduation rates than some of their other peer institutions. That hurts them. But West Virginia's mission is to educate people, man, as many people as possible, and help people from the state of West Virginia get a degree and get out into the world and succeed in life. I don't think they're going to change that mission, but I think that hurts them. And they don't have, Virginia, for example. Virginia has North Carolina to attach themselves to. If UNC leaves, they want to take Virginia with them. West Virginia doesn't have anybody to attach themselves to, at least not that I'm aware of. We're the only school in our state, only Power 4 school in our state. I don't know who they have a tight relationship with academically or anything like that. I don't know. Maybe them and Pitt partner up and do something. I don't know. But I mean, Pitt's going to look out for Pitt because they're already an AAU school with higher academic standards. They might try to get into Big Ten. Who cares about every school's got to look out for themselves in this situation. And I don't know who West Virginia can align themselves with at this point. I don't know. Daniel Gigax, you make a great point. Daniel Gigax says having research hospitals doesn't guarantee AAU status. It's if they, quote, like you. And it's a political thing, man. And now listen, here's another thing West Virginia is doing. I don't know if this has anything to do with trying to get AAU or not, but I'm wondering, I can't help but wonder if it does. West Virginia's the president. West Virginia's just announced he's going to be starting July 1, I think, once Dr. Gee retires. His name's Michael Benson. He's currently the president at Coastal Carolina. I did a video on him. He really cares about sports. He understands the importance of sports. He understands that sports is the front porch to university, and that's how you get students in the door. He gets it. He's a sports fan. He played college sports, so he understands it. He also wrote books about AAU, the American Association of Universities. He's done extensive research on it. He's written books about it. It's very important to him. Research is research is a big deal to him. And he somehow was able to wow the West Virginia's Board of Regents. I didn't even hear his name as a candidate for the job when the search first started, but at the end of the day, he ended up landing it. They really liked what he had to say. He impressed them. And if he's that big on research, then maybe he'll do what he can to try to get West Virginia into a P2 conference. But I just don't think Tobacco Road will ever let West Virginia tag along with them, folks. I'm sorry. They have said no to West Virginia time after time after time when West Virginia has tried to get into the ACC over the years. UVA and the Tobacco Road schools did not want West Virginia in their conference. I don't see how that's going to change anything. West Virginia, the only way I see West Virginia surviving this is the Big 12 somehow figures out a way with Brett Yormark's ability and relationships. Maybe the Big 12 figures out a way to remain relevant. Maybe the SEC and Big 10 understand the importance of even if the ACC falls apart and loses P4 status, which I don't know that'll happen, but let's just say it does. I don't see. Maybe the SEC and Big 10 realizes that there's a need for a conference like the Big 12. Maybe they don't want to break away and do their own thing. But man, if they've got most of the top brands in their conferences, why would they need to associate with the Big 12 at that point? If they get to where they have 24 teams each or something, why would you need to? They could go do their own national championship, for crying out loud. You'd be a 48 team league. You might call it a super league. Maybe you don't, but you could have a 48 team league with two conferences, 24 teams in each conference. Go do your own thing and tell the Big 12 and what's left of the ACC and the G5, sayonara. See you later. We're out of here. We're doing our own thing. You guys crown your own champion. I could potentially see that happening.
And I don't want now, if it does, it does. I'm going to continue to root for my school. Well, that boy, my accent really came out there, didn't it? My school. I'm going to root for my school. But anyway, I'm going to continue to root for the school that I root for, and that's West Virginia. I'm going to continue to cheer them on. I'm going to continue to support them. But man, it would suck for that to happen. You know, I hope it don't. I hope it don't happen. But I'm just afraid it will, man. Maybe I'm just panicking for nothing. Yes, Bob, Miami is an AAU school. That's why I think Miami, and I've heard many shows talk about how AAU doesn't matter anymore. I don't believe that. I do not believe that at all. I know it's not a requirement to get into the Big Ten, but there are presidents in that conference that are not going to want to let a school in if they're not AAU. I know Nebraska's not AAU, but they were when they got there. I just I don't know. I'm really worried that my school's going to get left behind because there are just West Virginia's trying to do all the right things. They're expanding their hospital. They're bringing in a new president who cares about research and sports. They've right-sized the university for what they're trying to do. Unfortunately, that meant cutting out some programs and cutting out some jobs. A lot of people that didn't sit well with a lot of people. But what's the point in having a major with 2 people in it? And you've got to pay professors to teach those classes when you have a school who's tens of millions of dollars in the red. You can't do that. It doesn't make sense, right? So they had to cut. That's what you got to do. It sucks, and I hate it because people lost their jobs. But that's what happens in corporate America. That's right, Daniel. I have an accent, believe it or not. Can you believe that? Somebody from southern West Virginia has an accent. What's this world coming to, brother? Riley says she feels like the new president's going to have a great impact and opportunity for the school to have an experience. I think so too. I think it's a great hire. I really love the hire. But I just look, man, when you look and I just don't, again, whether we like it or not, these school presidents care about what schools they align themselves with, and the schools in Tobacco Road are never going to align themselves with West Virginia. Now, I think some schools in the SEC would, but even if you look at the SEC, look at the schools the SEC have taken in recently. The SEC has taken in what? Texas, high academic standards, AAU institution. Now, Oklahoma, I don't think is, but Oklahoma was they kind of attached themselves to Texas, right? They were kind of a partner for Texas. They took in Missouri. One of the reasons they took Missouri over West Virginia, because West Virginia came that close to getting in the SEC. They picked Missouri because of the market size. Missouri's a bigger market, and I think Missouri's AAU. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're AAU. I think that stuff's starting to matter to the SEC, maybe more so than it did in the past. Texas A&M's another one. High academic standards, AAU. So I'm worried. I'm really worried that West Virginia is not being AAU, not having a high graduation rate as some of their peers, being in a small state with a declining population is going to, at the end of the day, is what's going to keep them out of any potential, quote, Super League or any potential P2, whatever. So, in my opinion, the best hope, I don't want to say only hope, but I want to say the best hope for West Virginia to me is for the Big 12 to figure out a way to keep their seat at the table. Brett Yormark's got to work his magic. And unfortunately for many, because I shouldn't say for me, unfortunately for many, because I actually think this would be a good idea. But I think they need to they need to get that private capital deal done yesterday, in my opinion. Not private equity, but private capital, where you basically they invest money into the Big 12. They help you figure out ways to raise revenue, increase revenue for each school and the conference. And in a 10 to 15-year time frame, the Big 12 pays that private capital firm back a percentage of the revenue they made. That's what it's going to take for me. The Big 12, in my opinion, has got to get private capital done. And if there's schools not wanting to do it, I'm telling you, they got to figure out a way to get them on board or tell them to hit the freaking door maybe. I don't know. Something's got to be done. They cannot continue to let themselves get passed up and left. I mean, they're right now last of the P4 as far as TV revenue. They're neck and neck with the ACC. Now they're only behind them a couple $1 million. But with the ACC now having this unequal revenue sharing, which is a whole nother conversation, I think that's going to cause the league to implode anyway. The top teams in the ACC are now going to separate themselves from the ACC and the rest of the ACC and all the Big 12. So I don't know, man. Something's going to have to give. If you're the Big 12, you need to get a private capital deal done. You've got to figure out a way to earn as much revenue as possible. Ren Baker, West Virginia, you need to go start putting logos on your field. You need to go start having concerts and events and doing everything you can do to get money into your program, into your school, and into the Big 12 conference, because something's got to give, man. Or if not, we're going to get left behind, left holding the bag, so as they say. Well, speaking of bag, I'm going to get to some comments here, and then we're going to talk about Coach Prime getting a big fat raise. Most of you may have heard about that by now. Colorado gave Coach Prime a big contract extension. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, I'm going to get to some comments here. Daniel Gigax, who's a VIP member, says, Riley, it's all we have talked about for 2 years. Oh, sorry. I didn't. What did Riley say? Couz, don't feel bad. Sometimes my hick accent comes out really bad. Yep, Coach Prime's rolling in the money, Raven. Riley says it's good. Oh, it's always good to have a president of the school that likes sports and tries his best with the sports and holding his research and his knowingness. Yes, it is. Absolutely, it is. See if there's any other VIP members in here. I think I put S. Michael DeHart's what he say. He said, West Virginia is just fine in the Big 12. Screw SCCPN. All right. And earlier he said the T-Sippers conference can suck my big left toe. Michael, man, appreciate the comment and appreciate the support. Remember, if you all want to lead this conversation in the direction you want to take it, feel free to drop me a super chat. Hit the $sign in the chat box. It'll highlight the comment. I will read it. Be sure to read it, and it helps me see it easier, and I'm less likely to pass it up in the comments. Raven, yes, Coach Prime is rolling in the money for sure. Absolutely. Eddie's in the house. He says, if and when the whole super conference thing materializes, perhaps the lesser programs will ultimately benefit from it. And that's possible, Eddie. It's possible. I don't know how they would benefit other than just being able to do their own thing. But I don't, if that happens, I'm afraid the networks won't have as much money to throw. If you see the SEC and Big Ten gobble up, let's say they each get to 24 teams, right? They take the top brands from the ACC and maybe a couple from the Big 12, and which probably wouldn't include West Virginia. Maybe it would. I don't know. But anyway, let's say that happens. And it's 24 and 24. And and they decide to do their own thing, 48 teams, 2 conferences to crown their own national champion, right? The networks are going to throw a lot more money at those 2 conferences probably than they are now, potentially. Which means they would probably have to take money from what they're giving the Big 12 and what would be the new ACC in that case. That really concerns me. Now, maybe they've maxed out on what they're willing to give for these TV deals, but I got a feeling that's not the case. Because if you get a conference, if you add, I think the networks are partially behind this anyway. I think they're the ones behind the scenes kind of pushing for UNC and UVA to get in these conferences because of the advertising dollars in those states. I think that's a big part of it. I think they'd be totally on board with it. Daniel says West Virginia will not be kicked out of the Big 12. They are in the top 5 in Big 12 viewership. Yes, I think they're fine in the Big 12. I definitely do. I'm just worried that the Big 12 itself might get hung out to dry. And right now, every school in the ACC and the Big 12, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get into the SEC or the Big 10. That's their goal. And if that ain't your goal and you're not trying to do that, then you're not doing your job. If you're the president or the AD of a school in the Big 12 and ACC and you're not trying to position your school to be in one of those leagues, you're not doing your job, period. It doesn't mean you don't like the league you're in now, but you're trying to survive and stay at the highest level possible in the future, right? That's what everybody's trying to do. It's every man for himself to a degree, right? So that's what every school president and every AD should be trying to do right now. But even if they're not able to do it, if the Big 12 can at least stay relevant, then I'm okay with West Virginia's position. But I'm just worried that the Big 12 won't. I'm really worried the Big 12 won't. Jimmy says Georgia, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and one other SEC school are trying to meet SEC research requirements for membership. The SEC has enough AAU members now to sponsor other SEC schools for membership. Interesting. He says that's how the Big 10 does it. Interesting. I would love to see what the research spending is, and I guess I could look it up, but I don't have a chance to do it right in the middle of the show. I'd love to see what the research spending is at those 4 schools, or 3 schools, rather, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. And compare that to West Virginia. Like I said, West Virginia, I think I read they did about a little over $250 million in research in the 2024 fiscal year. But I know AAU looks at not just the research, but what type of research it is. Right? There are certain types of research they favor over others. Most of West Virginia's research is going to be on the medical side because of their hospital. And it's really it's kind of the driving force at West Virginia, to be honest, is the growth in their hospital, WVU medicine. It's kind of their baby. It's kind of their big deal, right? And they've done a lot of great things at West Virginia Medicine, man. It's a great, great hospital, great institution. Their people are getting great degrees there, putting a lot of doctors coming out of WVU medicine. But that at the end of the day, that doesn't get you in AAU, and that doesn't get you in conferences. It helps. It definitely helps. Don't get me wrong. But West Virginia is just, I think I'm finally starting to come to the realization that West Virginia, because of their demographics, their geography, their location, their population, all these other things, I just don't think they're going to ever get in to the quote unquote big boys club. You know? All right. Let's go ahead and talk about Coach Prime. Well, dagnabbit. The article I tried to pull up is behind the paywall. Let me find another one. Don't you just love it? Don't you just love it? Coach Prime extension. Here we go. Sports Illustrated. Deion Sanders, Colorado Buffaloes contract extension details. The Colorado Buffaloes and Coach Deion Sanders announced a significant contract extension that will make Coach Prime one of the highest paid coaches in college football. Fresh off a 9-4 season in 24, Sanders agreed to a 5-year, $54 million deal. I'm going to read that again. 5-year, $54 million deal. So that's a little more than $10 million a year on average. Although Colorado fans hope it never comes into play, Sanders' contract includes a formal buyout agreement that decreases each year he stays in Boulder. This is typical for college football coaches' contracts and helps the school mitigate losses in case of sudden departure. So the longer he stays, the lower his buyout gets, which, again, that's pretty normal. According to Sportico, Sanders would owe CU $12 million in liquidated damages if he terminates his new contract on or before December 31st, 2025. That's all? Only $12 million? Holy cow. Every year, Sanders' buyout number drops by at least $1 million. The buyout drops to $10 million before December 31st, 26, $6 million before December 31st, 2027, $4 million before December 31st, 2028, and $3 million before December 31st, 2029. Sanders' old contract buyout will set at $8 million if he left Colorado before the conclusion of 25. The buyout would only come into play if Sanders accepts alternate employment as a coach at the collegiate or at the non-amateur level. The new contract also allows Sanders' potential new employer to pay the buyout. Coach Prime received some interest from NFL teams earlier this season, but ultimately decided to stay at Colorado and coach without his son, Shador and Shiloh. So the buyout would only come into play if Sanders accepts alternate employment as a coach at the collegiate or non-amateur level. So pro level. I'm trying to understand. So if he just retires, I guess he doesn't have to pay a buyout. Okay. I guess that's what that means. Sanders' contract also features several performance incentives, including a $400,000 bonus for winning the conference championship game or appearing in the first round of the CFP. Colorado Athletic Director Rick George, who spearheaded his hiring, spoke on the impact and expectations. Coach Prime has revolutionized college football and in doing so has restored CU football to our original rightful place as a national power. This extension not only recognizes Coach's incredible accomplishments transforming our program on and off the field, it keeps him in Boulder to compete for conference and national championships in the years to come. Sanders also expressed his desire to continue Colorado football's recent rapid growth. The Buffs won only one game in the season prior to Sanders' arrival, but secured 4 victories in 2023 and 9 this past year. I just heard a super chat come in. I will get to it as soon as I finish the article, which is I'm almost done. I'm excited for the opportunity to continue building something special here at Colorado, Sanders said. We've just scratched the surface of what this program can be. It's not just about football. It's about developing young men who are ready to take on the world. I'm committed to bringing greatness to this university on and off the field. We've got work to do, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here, making history with these incredible players and this passionate fan base. Lastly, anybody got at least a 5-bedroom home with acreage for sale? I like that last part. But anyway, so Deion's bringing the bag home, baby, like he needed it. Big Dan T in the house. Somehow or another, I don't know how this happens. I got it. There we go. Big Dan T in the house. He says, they can't look down on us after Rich Rod wins us 3 national titles in the next 3 years. Hell, West Virginia. Dan, I hope that's true, man. Wouldn't that be something if Rich Rod can bring West Virginia national title? I'm not going to get my hopes up, brother. I'm just going to try to stay level-headed. Keep my expectations at a reasonable level, brother. BYU football says he doesn't think the Big 12 should expand at all. 16 teams is hard enough to schedule now. Let me get back to the Coach Prime conversation. Coach Prime bringing home the bag. $54 million over 5 years, a little over $10 million a year. A lot of money, one of the highest paid coaches in college football. Is it worth it? Why, yeah. If you're Colorado, think about it. Whether we agree or disagree with how Coach Prime does things, it's beside the point. Colorado's enrollment since Coach Prime came to Colorado has skyrocketed. Their TV viewership skyrocketed. They are now one of the most viewed football programs in the country. They're up there with the SEC and the top teams in the Big Ten. They're getting a lot of views. Their enrollment's up. They're getting more, whether this matters or not, I guess it does to some people, probably does to the board and the presidents. They're getting a more diversified group of students into Colorado. But the main thing is he's bringing more attention, probably more marketing opportunities, more revenue, and more students to the University of Colorado. And what's that do? It makes Colorado a lot more money. Coach Prime, in my opinion, whether I agree with everything, I don't agree with everything he does and says by a long shot. I've criticized him in the past. I've given him his flowers in the past. But if you're sitting in Rick George's seat, the AD at Colorado, this was a move you had to make, in my opinion. You've got to keep Coach Prime in Boulder as long as possible. He's brought Colorado back from a winning standpoint. He's putting Colorado on the national map from a university standpoint. And again, marketing dollars, cha-ching. Student enrollment, cha-ching. And by the way, as I sit here, the fan of another Big 12 team, this helps the conference. Right now, the Big 12 lags way behind most of the SEC teams, the top tier Big 10 teams, and several of the ACC teams in viewership, except one team, and that's Colorado. Colorado is, whether we like it or not, this is just real facts here. The numbers bear it out. Colorado is bringing more TV eyeballs to the Big 12 conference. And what will that do? We talk about a private capital deal. I mentioned that earlier. Having Coach Prime in the conference makes the Big 12 more valuable. Absolutely. If he's still in the conference when they go to renegotiate the media deal in 2030, if he decides to stay on even longer, guess what? That media deal may go up. And even if he leaves at the end of his contract, if Colorado has the Colorado program might be elevated to a level if they keep winning and the student enrollment continues to climb, they might be elevated to a level to where they can sustain it. And they might be more valuable. They won't be as valuable as they were with Coach Prime, but they still might be more valuable than they were 3 years ago or 4 years ago. See what I'm saying? So Coach Prime being in Boulder is not only good for Boulder, it's good for the Big 12 conference, folks. We need anything we can in this conference to bring us more revenue and more TV eyeballs. And Coach Prime does it. Whether we like him or not, whether we agree with him or not, whether we think he's too cocky, whether we think the way he works the portal, whatever. Whether we agree, disagree, think he's a bum, whether we think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, it doesn't matter. The numbers bear it out. He's good for the conference, period. And I think this is a good move for the Big 12. Now it means Colorado's going to continue to get star players every year, which is going to make them tougher to compete with. But overall, for the Big 12, it's a good thing in my opinion. And I'm glad that he's going to stay. And I hope he does stay the entire length of his contract. And I hope some way, somehow the Big 12 is able to capitalize on that. To me, the easiest way to do that is what I mentioned earlier. Private capital. If a Redbird Capital or somebody comes in, they might see an opportunity to strike while the iron's hot. Let's go ahead and strike this deal while Coach Prime's still in the league. Try to make money over, some quick money, so to speak. I know private capital is a long-term play. Don't get me wrong, but if they can make as much money as they can on the front end of that, it makes things even better on the back end, right? But anyway, look, like I said, I've criticized some of the things Coach Prime has done. But, man, when you look at the team he put on the field, now it's going to be interesting to see how they do without Shedeur and Travis Hunter. Can he sustain it? That's going to be the question. Can Colorado sustain that success without Shedeur Sanders and without Travis Hunter? I don't know if they can, but we will see this year. They're still getting good players out of the portal, but there are no more Travis Hunters out there, folks. Travis Hunter was probably a once-in-a-generation player. Or at least once in a generation, I'd say is fair. At least once a decade, right? And even Shedeur, one of the best quarterbacks. He's probably going to be the second or third pick in the NFL draft. At least the second quarterback taken off the board in this year's NFL draft. So, regardless of what we think about him, the young man's talented. Both of those young men are talented, and they helped elevate Colorado football. Can they continue to play at that level without him? We're going to find out starting in 2025 because this is going to be the first time Coach Prime has coached without his sons on the team at any level, is my understanding. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. Stormy Cyclone in the house. Is this money for Prime an indication of PE coming to the Big 12? That's a great question, Stormy Cyclone, and it very well could be. I hope it's the case. Again, I hope it's more private capital than private equity, but I get your point. And I'm hoping that's the case because I wanted them to do a deal yesterday. Hopefully, Raven, hopefully West Virginia can find some Travis Hunters. You're right. I don't think they'll find any Travis Hunters, but if they can find themselves some Beanie Bishops or some, who else? Kevin Whites or some Bruce Irvins, that'd be great. I'll take it. Jimmy says, how much is the enrollment increase at CU because of Deion, and how much is because Deion asked CU to lower admission standards, and they did? That's fair, but would they have lowered admission standards if Deion hadn't asked? I mean, they might not have done that for anybody. See my point? He carries a big stick, man. Carries some weight because of his name. Travis Overdorf says, I would love if the Big 12 would expand so we can play the Big East schools that are now in the ACC. We could have an East and West like the SEC. I hate when we play on the West Coast. It's hard to watch. Yeah, those 10 p.m. games, man, aren't fun, are they? Daniel Gigak says if the Big 12 gets to 20 teams or any conference gets to 20 teams, you can do pods of 5. Play your pod, then an opposing pod. That's your 9 games. Swap pods, and it's a home every 6 years. I like that idea, Daniel. So if the Big 12 can go out and grab Louisville, NC State, maybe Virginia Tech, maybe Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Pitt, whoever, bring them in, I like that. I like the thought of that. Would that conference, though, with those brands, would it still get a seat at the table with the SEC and Big Ten? I don't know, man. I'm just worried. That's my fear. My fear is that the Big 12 will lose their spot. That they'll lose their spot at the power conference table. Maybe they won't, but I'm worried that they will. Michael Hart says the Big Ten will not admit a non-AAU member and are not happy that Nebraska lost their AAU accreditation. Based on Sankey's SEC admissions criteria, UNC, Virginia, Kansas, and Nebraska in SEC before FSU. Michael, that's interesting. He says the only reason Mizzou is in the SEC rather than West Virginia is AAU accreditation. I also, and Michael, I mentioned that earlier, and I think AAU, I do think was a part of it, but I think that being in Missouri and a bigger market may have also played a role. I really think, and look, I'm biased here, I'll admit that, but I think West Virginia would be a valuable addition to the SEC. They're not going to make. Here's the problem now, though. Here's the problem. When I say valuable, I was talking about from a fan base perspective and an on-field perspective and those types of things, culture. Here's the problem with West Virginia, and look, I'm a West Virginia fan telling you this here. Okay, I'm just being honest. The SEC is bringing in what, about $89 million a year or $80 million a year, something like that. I don't know, maybe $69, $70 million a year per team. West Virginia's not worth that. They're not. I mean, they're just not. Now could they go in at a half share and go in at 35 or 40 million a year? Maybe. I do think they're worth that, probably. Or at least have the potential to be if they start winning again. And that's why I think bringing Rich Rod back was so important. If really whoever they brought in, it was going to be important. But it's Rich Rod, so that's why I'm talking about it. But one thing Rich Rod was bringing that other coaches were not is the financial backing of a lot of the donors. And if they can boost West Virginia with more donations, better NIL money, they can meet the profit sharing cap. They've already hired more coaches than they've ever had. So that's a start. They're the highest paid defensive coordinator in their school's history. There are a lot of things West Virginia's doing right now that they've never done before financially. They've not been able to afford in the past. That shows me that they're doing everything they can possibly do to win now, because they know the number one thing they can do, the one thing they can control, or one of the things they can control, is how good they are. How many games do they win? Do they compete for conference championships? Do they get into the CFP? They can control that. You can't control how many people are in the state. They only have so much control over how many students enroll at West Virginia. They don't have control over how many baby boomers are in West Virginia versus how many Gen Xers or how many Gen Zers or whatever it is these advertising companies are looking for. That stuff West Virginia University can't control. What they can control as an athletic department is how many games they win. And if they can win games, it'll help. Is it going to be enough? Is it going to be enough? I don't know. They've increased their research spending. They're growing the size of West Virginia University Medicine, buying up most of the hospitals in the state. They're bringing in a president that values both athletics and academics, and especially research spending. They're doing a lot of great things. They're right-sizing the university to make sure they have the right amount of professors, that they're offering the right programs, they're doing the right things, I think. But is it too late? And at the end of the day, I don't see West Virginia ever changing their admission standards because they can't afford to. If West Virginia increases their admission standards, most of the students in the state of West Virginia, what are they going to do? They're going to go to Marshall. They're going to go to the Fairmont State, Glenville State, Bluefield State, Concord, you name it. They're going to go to those schools instead. So, and West Virginia University can't afford to let that happen. So they've got to keep their admission standards at a level that makes sense for the state they're in, the region of the country they're in, right? So I think at the end of the day that may hurt them, along with the fact that they're in a low population and in a market that's probably not super attractive to advertisers. All right. D5 Terp says Missouri is AAU, Texas and OU were the right blend. Yeah, and that's what I meant earlier. D5 Oklahoma. Anytime there's been a consolidation, expansion, whatever you want to call it, realignment, each school has a partner. Like the Big Ten, I don't think Big Ten takes Oregon, and they're not taking Washington. Washington's a Big Ten fit. Oregon, yes, Oregon's AAU, but they don't really fit the Big Ten mold in a lot of other ways. But they're a valuable brand in athletics. So you get the valuable brand of an Oregon that happens to be AAU. That's my understanding. Oregon had to make some commitments to their research spending and those types of things. So they still do have commitments they have to meet. But you get the valuable brand in Oregon because thanks to in large part to Phil Knight. Oregon is a very valuable brand. You get the Washington, who's not only a valuable brand, but a very highly rated academic institution. Both are AAU, and they both get you into new markets. I don't think Oklahoma goes to the SEC without Texas. There's always, UCLA doesn't make it into the Big Ten without USC. There's just West Virginia has nobody to help them out. That's one of my concerns as well. Who can West Virginia attach themselves to get? Virginia may attach themselves to UNC to get into the Big Ten or SEC. West Virginia has nobody to do that with that I know. Maybe they do, and I'm just not aware of it. Oh, and something else that West Virginia has working against them. They don't have an airport. There is an airport in Morgantown, but it's my understanding it's not large enough to accept commercial flights. That's a big deal. As a matter of fact, when they joined the Big 12, I think they had to agree to upgrade that airport. And they still haven't done it yet. They've tried, but the city of Morgan or the Morgantown airport, I don't know what the issue is, but I don't think they've got the expansion that they wanted. But there are a lot of things that work against West Virginia that they just have little control over. And again, there are a lot of schools in the Big 12 that, for those of you joining us, there are a lot of schools in the Big 12 that fit that same mold. Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and others that don't really fit the profile of some of these other conferences because of academics, because of maybe because of demographics, maybe because of whatever, population, state population, whatever. I don't know. You name it. So I'm worried that these schools are going to get left behind if the SEC and Big Ten poach the top brands from the ACC and go off and do their own thing. That's my fear. Sorry, first, last. I'm just trying to be honest. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying it's my fear. Things are not always sunshine and rainbows, and we have to face the reality of college sports today. D5 Terps says Notre Dame and Miami most likely 19 and 20 in the Big Ten. I think they know it already. Greg talked about on his show yesterday how Miami is now, I don't know, apparently the Big Ten is interested in Miami. Yep, Stanley says West Virginia didn't get in because of TV footprint, and that's not improved at West Virginia, unfortunately. If anything, it might have gotten worse because the state has continued to lose population. Stanley says the West Virginia TV viewership is good, especially when we're good, so WVU stands a good chance in the realignment game. Maybe so, man, but I just don't know that that's enough. Bagman says Oklahoma could have gotten in without Texas. Maybe. I'm not trying to bash Oklahoma, Bagman. Oklahoma's, they're a blue blood program. I'm not bashing them at all. But, explain to me how UVA is going to get in over Florida, potentially get in over Florida State and Clemson then, potentially. Is UVA a more valuable brand than Florida State and Clemson? No. But they bring a separate market, a large TV market. They bring AAU status. They bring high academic standards. They bring a lot of things to the table that Florida State and Clemson may not. Right? That's my point. And yes, West Virginia can bring a new market to the SEC. They're a contiguous state to other SEC schools, a la Kentucky. So they do bring that to the table. They bring good TV viewership. They bring a culture similar to the SEC, but they don't bring the high academic rankings, and they don't bring the large state with the large population, unfortunately. Daniel Gigak says there isn't room to expand in Morgantown. Clarksburg Airport was rebuilt. Yes. Is Clarksburg, Daniel, remind me, did Clarksburg Airport, are they now able to accept commercial flights? I'd love to know that, because it's my understanding there are still a lot of people who fly into Pittsburgh versus Clarksburg. Bagman, remind me, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Oklahoma get turned down by the Pac-12 a few years ago? If they got turned down by the Pac-12, then I would imagine, well, the SEC may not turn them down. I don't know. My point is, it's always a 2-team expansion, not just one, right? Let's see. Michael Hart says Stanley Metz, Missouri's largest TV market is Kansas City and is owned by KU, Overland Park in Johnson County. Yeah, but there are still some other markets in that state, Michael, that probably are still larger than anything in West Virginia. St. Louis alone would be bigger than anything West Virginia can offer from a TV. I think the biggest TV market West Virginia can contribute is they are part of the Pittsburgh TV market. I don't know if it's part of the DMA or whatever they call it, Pittsburgh, but if you're in Morgantown and you turn on the television, you can get Pittsburgh news on, and vice versa. So they do bring a portion of that market, but Pittsburgh's only the 30th largest market in the country or something. So even that is not super attractive. They have Breeze Airways at Clarksburg, but is that enough really? I don't know. Maybe it's big enough airport to, but Clarksburg's 30 minutes from Morgantown. See, that's part of the problem too. They don't have direct flights coming right into Morgantown. Bagman says the PAC wouldn't let us bring Okie State, and Texas politics got involved with the move. Got it. Michael Hart says Missouri is AAU and has the #1 medical research reaction in the United States. Mizzou is the only U.S. producer of 4, I'm going to put that on the screen, 4 radioisotopes in nuclear medicine. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that information. I wasn't aware of that. But that goes to my point earlier. I think the SEC is starting to look a lot harder at academics than they might have a decade ago, or well, not a decade, 2 decades ago. Texas A&M and Missouri and Texas are examples of that, in my opinion. And I haven't even mentioned basketball. I think the SEC is valuing basketball now more than they used to as well. That's what I think. I actually think my fellow Big 12 people might kill me here. If there's any team in the Big 12 that has a shot at the P2, I think Kansas has the best shot, because they're already AAU and they're a basketball school, and they do have a quality brand. My gosh, Greg Flugar was talking about how Duke might even have a shot to get in. If Duke can get in the P2, surely Kansas can. Can't they? I don't know. This whole thing has been weighing on my mind the last couple of days, and I've been wanting to do this video. I just had to kind of get my thoughts together, and thought today was a good day to do it. I had a little bit of free time after cutting some grass and working outside. It's been a beautiful day here in the great state of West by God, Virginia. I was able to get outside, do some yard work, enjoy the nice weather, and still had time to get on here and talk to my wonderful, wonderful Couz's Corner family. You guys have been awesome. Thank you for all who joined the chat. If you're watching this on the replay, be sure to leave a comment below. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, whether you're live or you're watching this on the replay. That thumbs up really helps. And it didn't give me my thumbs up like I wanted it to. Let me try that again. There it is. There we go. Now, how can I get the fireworks? How do I get fireworks? I don't remember how I get fireworks. Anyway, thank you for joining the show. Please thumbs up. Please subscribe. Help me get to my next big goal of 10,000. I'm hoping to get there by the end of 2025. It's kind of a lofty goal, but I think I can do it. And I need your help to do it, though. So please do. If you're not subscribed to Couz's Corner, please do. I cover West. For those of you who might be new, I cover West Virginia. I cover the Big 12, and I do cover conference realignment if it's something that I feel is, if there's some meat on the bone, so to speak. I don't want to just get on here and regurgitate the same stuff everybody else is saying. But if I feel like I got something I can add, I'd like to cover conference realignment as well. But I'm not going to lie. I do sometimes get conference realignment fatigue, and sometimes I just like to talk ball. So, but I will talk it because I know a lot of people are interested in it. So with that being said, and don't forget, I have Hoops from the Hills. If you're interested in what's going on with West Virginia basketball, we've had a lot of exciting things going on with the new coach and everything lately. Go check out Hoops from the Hills, where I'll talk West Virginia Mountaineer hoops. Also got a brand new website called wvsportschat.com, designed by my good friends over at Appalachia Digital. If you are looking to build yourself a brand new website, or you want to get found on Google at your current site, go see appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Let them know I sent you. They will help you out and take care of you. We're still in the process of making a few tweaks and bug fixes on my site, but it is up and running. There are blogs up over there. There's access to my YouTube content on both channels. The way you can drop a line and shoot me a message if you want to reach out to me. And you can access my merch store. You can get access to a link to see my good friends over at Cats Counter Stone Street on Buckner. There's a link to my Fanatics store. If you want to do some Fanatics shopping, buy a jersey or a hat or something of your favorite team, use the Fanatics link on my website at wvsportschat.com, and it'll take you right to the Fanatics store. And if you buy something during that shopping session, I'll make a small commission. I appreciate you tuning into this live edition of Couz's Corner. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf. Q Country Roads.